Assalamu alaikum. Today I'm going to talk about a major issue in online education. And that major issue revolves around the problem that is often pointed out, which is cheating by the students. Now, why the students are cheating? Now, it is a whole different understanding of education itself. We are trying to assess in conventional education. The whole idea is that you are going to download certain information into the minds of the people, and then you are trying to measure whether the things have been absorbed by the student or not that were downloaded into the mind. And therefore, your questions simply revolve around assessing the extent to which the student has understood those concepts that were delivered by you. Now, that was conventional education. The origins of the conventional education were in the era of industrial age, where the industries worked according to set processes, and the employees had to be told what the process is, how things are manufactured, and there were assembly lines, and people should have been good in understanding the procedures and processes, and then work according to the set things. And therefore, the education was revolving around this. Now we have entered information age. The era of assembly lines is gone. Now with 3D printing and all sorts of things available, technology, we can think about delivering a customized product to every customer. And that's where the innovation and the creativity part comes in. So therefore, the premium on regurgitating what was downloaded by the teacher has come down. However, many of our teachers are still living in that industrial age. And those teachers think that their duty is to put something in the mind of the students, that's the lecture, and then in the exam see how much they have retained. But education in the information age has changed tremendously. And now the whole idea is that whether the teacher has stimulated the thought processes of the student to an extent where they have begun to use their minds and create new ideas after analyzing the existing situations. So those who are still living in the conventional age have put a lot of premium on designing systems that will provide an exact replica of a physical examination hall where the students are present, they are distanced for each other, they don't talk with one another, and they simply and there is an invigilator who is looking at every action that the student is making, and that's the whole idea. So a lot of technology has gone in. There is e-proctoring for invigilation from outside. There is also various softwares that would lock your screen so that you can't open another window. There are also examination capsules that have been made, such as the Prometric or other such examination centers where you go and appear in exam for SAT or TOEFL or GRE and other such exams. And it is a closely guarded environment where there are cameras and you are trying to see. Now, this can be done on a one-on-one basis. You can divide such capsules, but doing it at a mass scale is really difficult, where you have 40 students and you have to take so many exams. So, for instance, in a university which is running about 1,000 course sections, with each one with 40 students, and conducting those 1,000 sections examination at same time, using those kind of specialized material, and where everyone has the same question paper, and therefore you are trying to see whether they are cheating or not, they are discussing or not, and then there is a whole process and overhead of then adjudicating instances where the student was not visible on the screen for some time, the student's device had not worked, where the student complains of broken connection, where the student may have used maybe WhatsApp to discuss something with the students, where the student's face was not visible, where the student hands were not visible, and these are all the issues for which there are also technologies. I'm not saying that there are technological solutions, but they are very expensive solutions. But the problem with each one of those technological solutions, which cannot ensure that the student is there in a pre-specified physical place, the issues become more and more complex. And I compare this situation with the situation which is there in the computers, that is viruses. So we typically see that such and such virus has inflicted such and such damage on such computers, and for every virus there is then an antivirus which comes in, which removes that virus, and for every antivirus and its capacity, a new virus gets designed that infiltrates the system, which is much more sophisticated and which is much more difficult to handle. And of course, then there is a catching game, and the antivirus companies then develop an antidote to the new kind of virus. And this is a game that is continuing now for the last 30, 40 years since the advent of the personal computers and open networks. So, similarly, I see no difference between this adversarial relationship existing between the students whom you want to test, and the teachers. Teachers are out there to defeat the students trying to appear or trying to copy. And students, of course, are very intelligent. For every system that we design, they will think of a new thing. And this reminds me of a very famous book by Edward de Bono, which is a Handbook of Wisdom. And this is the figure that I saw in there. As you can see in this figure, it says that if you want someone to stop going from A to B, and that student or that person is really intent upon going to B, then it is very difficult for you to stop that person. You see, so here is you may construct a wall. They would like to climb the wall and get into the other side. They may actually, and if it is an impregnable wall, they may design a tunnel below it. And if you stop those tunnels and you have vibration testers to see if the tunnel is not working, then maybe that person may launch himself via some kind of a projectile and then goes over it. It can be a plane, or it can be a rocket, or it can be another. So whatever thing that you will come up with whatever technological obstacle that you would come in, the person who is really intent upon crossing will be able to get to the other side, will actually design another technology that will defeat the earlier defensive technology. And this we see in the warfares and in all those things. The things are becoming more and more sophisticated, and it's an unending war. What Edward de Bono says is that if you want to stop someone from going from A to B, Instead of trying to put barriers between A and B, find a more attractive path for this person to go from A to C rather than A to B. Make it more attractive for the student to choose C instead of B. Such a simple solution. And that's what we need to think when we are talking about stopping the students from cheating. So what is that attractive path, that movement from A to C rather than A to B? So A to B is characterized by the incentive of the grades. So the teacher wants to give certain grades and the teacher wants to keep the paper secret, and the grade is being offered on the basis of what the teacher is assessing, and the student wants to change that assessment. So one of the ways of making it more attractive for the students is a simple of a self-analysis. So in 360 degrees evaluation and assessments of the employees, you give them some targets before the year, and then at the end of the year you ask that person to explain to what extent the targets have been met. And it is a matter of that person satisfying the boss whether those targets are met, and the boss actually knows the extent to which those targets are met because those targets are visible. So the change in process of when we are looking at the in this era, what we need to do now is to actually so I will try to explain this process by using Bloom's taxonomy. So in the Bloom's taxonomy, the top two levels are known as the create level and the evaluate level and the analyze level. The bottom three levels are the remember, understand and apply. So you need to remember the procedure that was there, and then you need to understand why that process is happening, and then you need to apply that process and procedures to get certain things done. And that was the objective in the conventional examination system for the industrial age. But today we need people who are manipulating information. We need people who can analyze the situation and can analyze the situation from different angles, from angles that were not even conceived before. And then after analysis, developing an evaluation system that can grade and that can mark those systems, and from there you can challenge them to create. Those are known as the top levels. So for making this, I will just go over the top two levels, and I'll try to explain that the teachers need to understand how to create those two levels in their question papers. So the challenge basically is not to stop the students from cheating, although it should be done to the extent that it is possible, but to obviate the need for the student to be cheating. So they will cheat and they will ask, they will go to Google and search for the answer. Why they are doing it? Because you are asking them something that is already known. It's already there on the Google. Why you are asking it? In today's world, asking something which is available on Google is a counterproductive thing. Why you are asking? One can actually, while I'm saying, you can just Google and find that information. Why you need that person to do? So we need to be asking things that are not known. And that is the challenge of the faculty members. So the challenge for the faculty members is to design the questions in a form where the students can actually create something new. So let's look at, so there are certain verbs that have been designed. So this table shows the verbs that are typically used at the remember level, at the understand level, at the apply level, at the analyze level, at the evaluate level, and at the create level. So over here I am just going to explain in the next few minutes a little bit more about the create level and the evaluate level. So what kind of things that you would like them to do? Remember that at the create level and the evaluate level, the top two levels, you are not concerned about whether the student is cheating. You are concerned about the originality. And you check that originality through plagiarism check. And it is a well-known check that is available. And so that's how the PhDs and the MS programs are typically checked. So here are certain examples of the create level. So we can ask the students to write a blog about a particular issue, a blog post. They can actually build some new ideas from existing components or ideas. So you can give them a certain components or certain technical terms and then ask them to define something new, maybe a new conceptual framework, a new model from this. The other way is to make them make them animate or make an animation regarding a process flow. So that is something new. So this kind of an animation they are going to make, and in that process they are also learning. So remember that at the create and the evaluate level, our emphasis is not on regurgitation of the information, but of creation of new ideas. So you can ask them to compose some poetry, song or music about something. You may like them to write an essay. You can direct a mission, play or an expedition. So the students can be told to develop an expedition which will explore such and such areas. You will have a mission where, design a mission where this group has to achieve that goal in X amount of time. You can devise a solution problem. You can give an original problem and then ask them to devise a solution. And you can create a wiki on some category. You can write an essay or a plot or a short story. They can make a film. They can play a role or play acting a role. So these are several things. So ask them to become so you give them a situation and ask them to play different roles in analyzing that situation. So from a person who has designed the process, ask them to evaluate that process. From a person who is the consumer, ask them to evaluate the process. Ask another one someone can become an administrator, other one can be an implementer. So those are the different roles that you can assign. So the student has the option of picking up one role and then doing a whole thing. And you can convert it into you can give that assignment in a group form and ask each student to play a different role and then develop their solution. And in that way you will be able to understand how innovative they are. And because the roles are different that you have designed, obviously there's no chance of, there will be little chance of cheating. And these are all the things that you can actually assess in a couple of minutes by asking the student to do a small presentation or a viva. To mix some pieces, to design something new, to mix some ingredients, to prepare a new recipe, a new solution, to manage a meeting or a project. So here is a meeting, so conduct that meeting. So instead of asking them to define something, ask them to develop an agenda and give a description of how the meeting is progressing, to negotiate a settlement. So these are different ways in which the create verb can be used. And of course, this is not a definitive list. There are others that you can do. Now let's come to the evaluate level of the Bloom's taxonomy. So here you can actually make the students argue in favor or against a proposition. So you can develop 10 or 15 propositions and ask each student to pick one, and one is arguing for and one is arguing against, and those 15 decisions. So everyone is getting a different paper. And this can be done. So, and it requires creativity. You will not be able to design all of these solutions unless you can open your mind to the various situations. To validate or test a particular hypothesis, so give them an hypothesis, this is what is happening, and then ask them to validate or test a particular hypothesis, and validate that hypothesis from various perspectives. So the moment you add various perspectives, you have suddenly multiplied the variations in that problem to so many students, because that's the whole challenge. So you can give, say, 40, if there are 40 students, so you give them 8 hypotheses and 5 different perspectives, and ask each one for working on that hypothesis. So you will have different perspectives coming, and they will not be able to copy from one another, because each one has a different hypothesis or a different perspective. To debate a particular issue from different perspectives is a similar thing, where you are making them, so the same thing that I mentioned earlier. So you can actually critique a proposition, so you can give them a number of propositions and ask them to critique them. By critique we mean that identify the positives as well as negative points. A critic is not necessarily someone who only points out the mistakes or the problems in a particular situation. And you can also give them several ideas and ask them to defend them. So this is something that you have often seen in various debates. So it's a debating environment. So when a debate topic is given, you have seen how many so many people talking on the same topic and giving different ideas. So none of the two debates are ever, although they may be using the same material, and you can easily point out and identify people who are copying through a simple plagiarism test. To hypothesize after setting up some relationships. So you can give them relationships that they can analyze and ask them to then hypothesize whether this thing is dependent upon that or that thing is dependent upon that, and is it a causal relationship, or is it, so ask them to use various kinds of ways of arguing about the relationships. To measure something using one or more instruments. So if you are measuring, you can use different type of instruments. So if you have to measure height, there can be 100 different ways of measuring a height. I'm talking in terms of scientific question. Similarly, if you can ask them to define success, for instance, there are so many ways to define success. You can moderate a discussion, so ask them to conduct a discussion and moderate it. That is also to predict based on identifying some trends. So once you have moderated a discussion, also ask them to summarize that discussion. So it can be an assignment that can be given where they conduct a session and then they come up with their recommendations to predict based on identifying some trend. So that's also, so prediction is also something which comes. But for prediction, you need to have an underlying model that will help you in predicting something based upon the parameters or the facts that are given. To review and editorialize some findings. So these are some of the examples that I have mentioned. I don't have the time to go into too much detail. But the important thing that I want you to take from this talk is that there are two ways, what I have described, there are two ways of looking at the problem of cheating. One is to erect barriers to cheating. And then I mentioned Edward de Bono's strategy. And that strategy was to make cheating unimportant and to make it a fun part, make it a more interesting thing to come and arrive at the same solution. Remember, the objective of both kinds of tests is to measure how much a student has learned. And the best way to measure how much a student has learned is by seeing how they have constructed something or how they have evaluated and created something out of that existing information. Thank you very much.